You? Okay, so tonight's stop, basically we continue, we're getting towards the end of the sugya of Avodim. Right? So now we get into a bunch more scenarios of somebody giving up his eved to pay a debt, and or if he sells his eved partially. Meaning, again, this is all going off the Gemara that the Mishnah says, once a guy sells his eved to a guy, or he sells his eved to somebody in Chutz La'aretz, the eved automatically goes free because he's not allowed to do that. Right? Right? So we're going to have all various different scenarios about these things. Okay, so Tana Rabban, second line down. Gabu b'chayva. If a guy collected a chayv, meaning he was the yid borrowed money from the guy, and the guy came and he took the guy's eved without the yid's permission. Maybe he just went into the yid's property and took his eved. Aishalakhu sikrikin, or sikrikin. Sikrikin are like the mafia. The mafia came and took the kid from him. So lo yatsa lecheirus, he doesn't go out free because it was an einus. Rashi has an einus. There's no knas. Again, we said that there's a knas on somebody who sells his eved to a guy, but here it was against his will. Right? The guy took the eved. The guy took the eved as payment. Or he was a guy, he went over to him like the mafia and said, if you don't give us your eved, we're going to bust your store or whatever it is. So therefore it's not considered a sale. So Gemara asks, if he gives it up for a chayv, he doesn't make a knas. Let's say the king comes and forces a guy to give away his silo, like all his grains. So the question is now, the guy didn't give off meiser yet. Now the goyish king comes and takes away all his meiser, right? It takes away all his grain. So does he have to give meiser on that grain or not? So the Gemara says, if the reason why the king took all his grain is because he owes the king money, so then okay, he has to give meiser because he's gaining from that. How he says in ba'an parus. But if it's just because he just wants to, Rashi says it means a hefsid, he just wants to cause a yid a loss, then the yid's not gaining anything from this, and then he's potter milasa. But whatever it is, you see that if the guy comes and takes the grain by force, the guy has to give meiser. So that means that it was legitimate, right? So Shimar answer Shani Hasam to come a star shilei. There's different because he gained from it. The yid is gaining from it, right? Because he's paying up his debt. Since he's paying up his debt, he gained from it, so therefore he has to take off meiser from it. Fine. So Toshima. Let's say a guy sells his slave to, again, a different type of farnhag is also a type of mafia, right? Meaning he didn't owe him any money, but the farhag, he did it in order to the guy was blackmailing him, right? So he said, here, take my eved. So yatsa lecheirus, that eved goes out for free. Now why? He was forced into it. The guy wasn't giving up his slave. This guy's coming to blackmail him and tell him, if you don't do this, I'm going to rat you out to the government. So he says, how about you take my slave? Right? So he says, fine. So then the slave goes out for free. It goes out lecheirus. He goes free because the guy shouldn't have given him up. But it was by force. So my answer is, Hasam Havale Lefayis. He should have been fayis in something, some other way. Meaning he should have appeased him, but Lefayis, and he didn't appease him. Meaning he didn't have to give away his slave. He could have, bought him pizza or something like that. Since he didn't do that, so therefore we look at it like he voluntarily gave up his slave, and therefore it's considered a sale. So Gufa, Amarav, Hamaycher Abdul Farnhag Avikachavim. The guy sells his eved to a Farnhag Avikachavim, Yatza Lecheirus, he goes free. So when I ask, "My Havalei Mevad," right? What was he supposed to do? This is just a different version of the previous one. What should he have done? He tried to get out of his blackmail and gave up his eved. So my answer is Havalei Lefayis v'Lefayis, because he should have appeased him another way and he didn't. Fine. Then the order says a shayla. Let's say, so again, going back on the mission that says you're not allowed to sell your eved to a guy, right? And if you do, you get a knas that he goes free and you don't get any money, right? So what happens if he only sold him temporarily? What happens if he sold him for 30 days? What's the din? So Tashma, if he sells it to a farn he goes l'cheres. Now the Gemara is assuming that this blackmailer was only blackmailing temporarily. It wasn't a permanent blackmail, right? So the Gemara is clearly learning the pshat in this farnhag is that he really was it was a temporary sale of the slave, and then the guy was going to give back the slave. Right, so that's what the Gemara is thinking. So when it says no, that you can't bring a proof from there because that blackmailer was a guy who was not giving him back, so it was a permanent thing. So you don't have a right. So then the Gemara continues. What happens if he sold the slave, but he said you can't work the slave? He told the guy, I'm selling you the slave, but he's not allowed to work for you. So what are you going to do with him? He's going to use him to have children. What do you call it? When by the horses when they sell the horses that win all the races? What do you call them? They stud. Right, they're selling him as a stud. Right, so he's just selling this guy as a stud. Chutzmin on mitzvahs, or he says, I'm selling you the guy, but you're not allowed to make him be over on mitzvahs. Chutzmi Shabbos v'Yom Tovim. Right, you can't make him work on Shabbos and Yom Tov. L'ger Toshav. What happens if he gives it to a ger Toshav? The Yisrael mummer. How about a Yisrael who's a mummer? Mahu. The Kusi, Mahu. What about a Kusi? So these are all kashas. So the Gemara says these are all shilas. The Gemara says Pashad miyachada. At least let's answer one shaila. Ger Toshav areu kai v'kachavim. A ger Toshav is like a guy. Kusi v'Yisrael mummer and a Kusi and Yisrael mummer. Amri lo kai v'kachavim. Some say it's like a guy. Amri lo Yisrael, and some say it's like Yisrael. The Gemara does not answer all these shilas. Right? The Gemara leaves it hanging. Doesn't say teku, just doesn't answer. What?
Yaakov, the Gemara before about 30 days. Would that be more of a shiloh or less of a shiloh compared to these shilohs? Because over there you're getting it. You're selling him completely 30 days in the sense that he can't keep mitzvahs during those 30 days, but afterwards he'll be back to you. Is that like more of a shiloh because for those 30 days you can't keep the mitzvahs?
Which case are you talking about?
The first case.
For those 30 days, he can't keep mitzvahs?
Correct.
So you're saying that, yeah, but Lamais, it's only a temporary thing.
Still. What's worse, that he doesn't keep the mitzvahs or that he can keep the mitzvahs, but he sold for everything else?
I don't know. Is it maybe it sounds like the Gemara's side is it's if he temporarily doesn't keep the mitzvahs, it's not so bad, which you're right. What's the pshat in that?
I would say it's more shver.
Right. No, I hear that. I know it's why is it more shver?
Because I'm saying you would think that that's the ultimate thing that they care about, the mitzvah, the knas.
Right.
We don't care whether he keeps them as mammon or not. We care that he keeps the mitzvahs. Once you took him this far, and he's already did a shtickle geiras, we don't want you to put him back in a situation where he's not keeping the mitzvahs.
I hear you. I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, yeah. I mean, does it have to do with that he's an avid Kanani, so therefore he's not really Jewish?
He's like 50% there. It's not like he's not Jewish at all. Right. He's mechuyev mitzvahs.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know. I hear. Okay, bye. Another let's say the Ebed gave himself to the Gayosas, to the armies, right? And the rabbi, not the rabbi, his master can't get him out. He's trying to rescue him. Meaning he gave himself up to these guys. And he can't rescue him. Can he at least take the money? Which is again a strange thing. This is a strange thing. Okay, he's what do you call it? They kidnapped him and they're willing to pay him for the worth of the slave. They're willing to pay him, right? Yeah. So can he take the money for that, or is that like he sold his slave? Some of the Rav Zrika, go look in your sugyas. And you'll find an answer. Nopak Dax, he went and he looked, Ba'ashkach, and he found the Tanya, learned the Brisa, somebody sells his house to a guy. Domav Asurin. The money he got is awesome. Meaning you're not allowed to sell land to a guy in Eretz Yisrael. That's one of the big things about the Heter Mechira for Shemitah in Eretz Yisrael, right? How do you go sell the land to a guy in Eretz Yisrael? So in the Shaila, you have to rent it.
They're leasing it, aren't they leasing it?
Yeah. So the same thing with Mechiras Chametz. Right? Mechiras Chametz, you're supposed to sell.
Was that a whole Shiloh inside giving land for peace? Like
that's a different Shiloh. That's a different Shiloh, right?
I'm saying, but that it falls into the same issue, no?
Exactly. Is it better to give up land, which is an Issa D'Oraisa, for peace? And now everybody holds that you should give up land for peace. I think as the holiday is you should. The question is, do you trust that there's going to be peace? Right? That's the question. Do you give up land? Do you trust them that it's worth being over the Issa D'Oraisa of selling land? Yeah? You can hear me now? Can you hear me? I'll put on the headphones. Okay.
Yes.
Anyway, yes, thank you. So the money that he gets is awesome, right? So what happens if the guy forces the yid to give up his land? And the Baal can't get it out of him. Not by Dina Yisrael, not by Dina Avdikam. You're allowed to take. He's allowed to take money. The Kaisev Umayla Bar Kajlin, and he could even write like a star in a Goyish court, which normally Yidden don't go to, because it's like he's saving it from their hands. Meaning this guy took his house. The guy's offering money. He could take the Gemara is saying he could take the money, but then he can bring the star to the court so that they'll have a record of it. Right? So what do you see from here? That even though the guy did something wrong, in the case where he did something wrong, he doesn't get the money. But in the case where he was forced into it, he's allowed to keep the money. So the same thing by the Eved. If the Eved was forced into being kidnapped, they're offering money for the Eved, then you should be able to take it. That's the Gemara's Raya. The Gemara says, no, it's not necessarily the same case. Excuse me. Since it's not enough that a person can live without a house. He can't, he won't, he's not going to come sell it. Meaning, since a person needs a house to live in, we're not going to be chayshid that if we let him keep the money that they trapped, that they took the house away from him, we're not going to be chayshid that he's going to go sell the house again. That's not going to be. But an Eved, right? An Eved, nobody needs an Eved. Eved is a luxury, at least what it seems like in the Gemara. An Eved's a luxury. So since Eved is a luxury, so maybe he's not going to come. He's going to come to sell him. You allow him to keep the money for the Eved, then he's going to come to sell him. Or he was saying, no, we're not chayshit. So basically, we don't have a proof. Right. Shalach lahu, Rav Ami. Rav Ami sent out from me, Ami Bar Nosson, Torah Yotzes L'Chol Yisrael. From me, Ami Bar Nosson, a Torah is going out to the whole Klal Yisrael. Eved Shipol Atzmi L'Kayosis, an Eved that gives himself up to these soldiers. And his master cannot take him out, not according to Jewish law, not according to non-Jewish law. He's allowed to take his money for the slave. And he can write it, and he can bring it into the courts of the Avdikaman. It's as if he's saving the money from his hand. He's saving his property. At least if we allow him to go to court, because at least he's going to have some form of money. Now, it's interesting. Machlokes Rashi Taisus here. Rashi says that why you allowed. We know that there's an issur to go to Goyish courts. Why? Because then you're being machshav a Goyish court, and you're showing that Yiddishkeit is not chashuv like a Goyish court. That's why you're not allowed to go to Goyish courts unless you have a heter. So Rashi says, even though you're allowed to just go get it signed from the courts, because that's even though it's a chashivas to them, but it's still allowed, right? So that comes out that that's the heter, why all our real estate stuff takes place with lawyers and in court and all that type of thing. I think that's a shot. right? Because it's not a chashiv. It's not. We're not dealing with their courts. We just have to do it in order to make sure that we maintain our property. So therefore, it's okay. Tosfos seems to say, I don't clearly understand the Tosfos. It's sort of like to be mekayim a mekach and to be mefarsem a davar, that's mutter. That you're allowed to do. Meaning it's not like going to court to fight a case. It's just going to confirm all the sales, etc., etc. Right? Fine. Right to Gemara. Omar Rabbi Shua ben Levi, hamaychar avdei levi kechavim. Somebody who sells his guy to a guy, right? If a guy sells if you sell his evet to a guy, you give him a knas up to 100 times more than he paid. Meaning we make him go back to the evet, to the guy, and if the guy wants to charge him 100 times more than the worth of the evet, the guy has to pay it in order to get the yid back, in order to get the evet back.
Where do we get 100?
That's sort of like the Gemara's kasha. Dafko, love dafko. The Gemara says, is that 100 for sure, or is that just a guzma? Where does 100 come from? I have no idea.
It's Yaakov. Is this? I'm saying that back by the time of Yeshua and Levi, they didn't have the ability to kanas. So whenever they say kainsin, I say in that time, what do they mean?
What do you mean?
They were able to kanas by the times of the Amoraim?
Maybe he's talking about the times of the Tanaim.
I don't know. I'm just asking.
Also, I think they could. I think they could have. As long as they had the power, I think they could have. I think. I don't know. But clearly he's saying yes. So anyway, so Rabbi Shua Levi is saying that 100 times. I don't know where the 100 times comes from. Clearly, Zev, the Gemara is asking the Shaila, like, is it a guzma or not? So Tashima, somebody sells a behema gasa. Now you're not allowed to sell a behema gasa. Behema gasa is like a cow, an ox, and those things. One of the more fascinating gezeras. The reason why you're not allowed to sell it to them is because we're afraid that you're going to rent it to them on Shabbos, or he's going to walk with the animal. You're going to walk behind the animal and show that it works on Shabbos, right? So because of that, you're not allowed to sell it to them. So Kainzim might say, we give him a knas up to 10 times. Right, so you see, the Gemara is saying, so 100 is lav dafka, 100 could be a guzma. It could be 10 times. The Gemara says, but Mashani Evan, no, maybe an Evan's different. The kol yoyma v'yoyma mifkala mitzvahs. This is what Akiva was saying before. Maybe every single day. The reason why you're getting a major knas because you caused this guy to be losing out on mitzvahs every single day. Right? Masha'en kain, if you sell a behema, that's a one-time issue. So that's one way of learning it. Somebody sells an eved to a guy, you give him a knas up until 10 times his money. Dafka or lav dafka? Is it dafka or lav dafka? Meaning here we switched it. Here the eved it's 10 times. So Tashma, till 100, right? So mamish the exact opposite of before. So my answer, Shani Eved Eloi Hadolei. Eved is different because he's not coming back. Right? He does not come back. Yeah. So Gemara says, asks, Ela Behema, time of mine, Mishum the Hadolei, right? The Behema is because he's going to get it back. Likna say Tveichad. Right? Then just give him one more knas, meaning why do you want the behemoth? Meaning, if you're saying the standard knas is when you do something wrong, is to pay 10 times, you have to pay 10 times what you sold it for. So now, if you pay 10 times, so the animal, it's really only 9 times, right? So, meaning pay 1 time more than 10. If you pay 1 time more than 10, meaning 11 times, that's essentially what it's saying. Like this, you're paying 10 times the animal without including the price of the animal. Meaning, point is that if it's a little bit more of an isser, so just pay 1 time more. Why do you got to go up to 100? Ella, so Gemara answers, Ella, Abed milsa de loishchi. Ebed milsa de loishchi. It's very uncommon to sell a slave. Well, milsa de loishchi like right? And we know Now we know that milsa de shchicha, something that's not common, the Chachamim never make a gezerah. Right? Fine. So milsa de shchicha, so it's not shliach.
Didn't we say before it's easy, you could live without a slave? So now we're saying you can't, it was uncommon to sell them?
It was uncommon to sell them.
And before we said that it's not, you could live without them. It's not such a big deal.
Correct, but they mean that you're saying that's why nobody sells them?
I don't know. But if it was so easy to live without them, maybe why would they not sell them? Like, why was it so uncommon?
No, I think it was uncommon because people listened and they didn't sell goyim. Does this mean that they don't sell slaves at all, or they don't sell slaves to goyim?
Rashi says, "Shiyim kruvad b'cham."
Right. So Rashi is mashma that it's that they don't sell them to goyim, not that they don't sell them. Period. I mean, they will sell, but they're just not going to sell to goyim. Now, why selling behemoths to goyim? Don't they listen? Right.
When it's the same character, what do you mean? Same property? You mean? An Evan and an animal is property. Is the same thing.
I don't know. Why are they not? Why would they sell animals more than an Eved?
Evan has a din like a Jew.
I hear.
He's worth more money.
I don't know. Fine. Okay, fine. The Bomine Rav Yirmiyah Rav Asi. Rav Yirmiyah asked the Shaila from Rav Asi. Mochar Avdo Mace. If he sells his Eved and then he dies, what is the din? Can they give a knas to his son after or not? Meaning, he sold his Eved and then he died. So now, does the son yarshin the knas, or does the son not yarshin the knas? Right. So let's say the kohen goes and he makes a cut in the ear of a bechor, and then the guy dies. Meaning the din by a bechor is you obviously give the bechor to the kohen. The kohen can't do anything until it gets a mum. So what about if the kohen puts the kohen is not allowed to put a mum into the animal. If he does, he gets a knas, and he can't have it. So let's say he does it and then he dies. So tzaram eisen bechor, if he cuts the ear of the bechor who makes kansu b'nai acharav mishum disura deraisi, we make a knas because we knas the son because it's an issur deraisa. Right? Meaning you can't go putting mumin into bechor. Haval hacha isur derabbanan, but here not to sell a guy is an issur derabbanan. Right? On top of base now. And if you're going to say, what about if somebody's mechaven to do his malach on cholamayid and then he dies? Meaning there's a din that you're not allowed to be mechaven to do malacha on cholamayid. Meaning if it happens to be a davar ovid, then you're allowed to do it on cholamayid. But you can't purposely plan to do things on cholamayid, right? Because obviously it's not covered yomtiv, right? Like Hansu b'nai acharav, we do not knas.
That's what nails and stuff like that come in if you don't do it before, right? That's the same thing.
It's a little bit different. Because nails is really more on covered yomtiv.
Okay.
Right?
Because you can't plan to do it then, right? That's what you...
Yeah, but that's more so that you go into yomtiv looking neat.
Okay. I tried.
So like we don't give a knas to the son after because the father didn't do an isser, right? Meaning he died before doing. Meaning again, I didn't explain the case well. Basically, the father planned on doing malacha cholamayid. Let's say, meaning he went to the store and he bought tons of wood. He's going to build a shed on cholamayid, right? Now he left all his wood outside, and then he died. So now the problem is now for the son, all the wood is getting rotten because it's going to rain, and they say it's good if you leave your wood out there, you don't build the shed, it's going to get rotten. Can the son build it or not? For the son, it's a davar ovid. He's going to lose all this wood that he yarshed. The father would not be able to do it because he planned on doing it with cholamayid, but the son didn't. Right now, it's a davar ovid for the guy. So we're saying in that situation, it's allowed. Why? Because the mice of the father never did anything wrong. He planned on doing something wrong. He didn't actually do something wrong. Right? So we have two scenarios.
Is it an Esther the wood for the father?
It would be an issue for him to build a shed on Cholamayid, yeah.
If he can't do it, so it's also the wood is also.
The father can't do it because he planned on doing a Cholamayid. The kid never planned on doing a Cholamayid. And the father never did an Isser either.
Why is it a davar ovid for the son? The father, the wood is considered a davar aser.
Right, but if the wood is going to get destroyed, I'm just throwing an example out. If the wood is going to get destroyed,
I understand. If it's a davar,
so it's a davar ovid. So it's a davar ovid for the son.
He never got anything because it was a davar aser from the father already.
Nobody was there. The father never did an Isser. He died before Cholamayid.
So
That's what it's saying. He never died. If he died on Cholamayid, I'm assuming the halacha would be different. Meaning if he died on Cholamayid halfway through the shed, then it's a knas. He should be knas. But here he died before Cholamayid. So he didn't actually do anything wrong. He planned on doing something wrong. He didn't actually do anything wrong. So therefore the son doesn't get the knas. But here, third line now, here the knas was to the guy who was over on the Issa, which is the father. And he's not here. Right? No, maybe the din in the knas it's a din in the money that you made. If you made money illegally, then that money gets knas. It has nothing to do with the person. This is your classic gavra chefza brisk Claire. According to the first shot, it's on the gavra. The gavra died. The son didn't do anything wrong. The son shouldn't be knas. The second one is no, it's in the chefza. This money came to Isser. So if this money came to Isser, along with this money comes a knas. And that the money is still here. So Malay said back to him to Yisur, we learned that Sadash and Eskabta B'Shvius. So you have a field that had all sorts of kaitzim. Is a plural of kaitzim. Is what do you call thorns? Yeah. So Tizra L'Maitzi Shvius, you're allowed to plant. Meaning during Shemitah, it's Issa D'Rabbanan to clear your field of thorns. So Maitzi Shvius, you're allowed to plant in it. Because even though you're benefiting from something on Shemitah, but Netaiva and the Daira, but if he did it, if he Netaiva means he put Zevel there, he fertilized it, or he put the Daira means he made animals, he put animals in there so they would automatically fertilize it, then that he's not allowed to do, right? So like Tizra L'Maitzi Shvius, he cannot plant their Maitzi Shvius because that was a knas that the Chachamim said, because he was an Iver. He was over on an Isser. And it's a daraisa preparing the land. Naktinon, Hetivo mace. Naktina means we have like a nakat. We have a Messiah. That if he did this Hetiva and he died, his kids can plant. The knas goes on him and not on his kids. So again, the Gemara is saying that by Shemitah, if the guy illegally fertilized his field, then he dies, his kids could use that field right away after Shemitah. So you see, it's a din in the Gavra, not in the Chefza. Let's say somebody was matama the tyrus of his friend, meaning a guy his friend, was tahar, and then the guy comes along and he makes his stuff tummy by touching it and touching to a sheret, bringing it to a levaya, etc., etc. So there's a knas, meaning midai raisa, he's potter, because we had this before, because that's called a hezek she'ein nikar. There's nothing recognizable, a very hard concept to understand. Basically, he made the guy lose all his food because the guy was tar, and he's not going to eat the tummy food. He made a guy, but since there was nothing visible about the tumah on the food, midai raisa is potter. Midai rabbanan, the rabbanan said you have to pay anyways. So what happens if a guy was matama his friend's tahar vegetables, and then he died? Like Kanser Rabbanan B'nayachar of the Chachamim did not give a knas to the son, and the son does not have to pay. Why not? My time a hezek she'ein nikar loishmei hezek. A hezek that's not recognizable is not a hezek. Uknasa the Rabbanan, and it's a knas to Rabbanan. L'bidei Kanser Rabbanan, the Rabbanan gave him a knas. L'brei like Kanser Rabbanan. To the son, the Chachamim did not give a knas. So the maskanas of Devarim is that the guy himself gets the knas, the kids do not get the knas. Fine. Next Gemara, Oile Chutz La'aretz. Now, what happens if he brought the slave to Chutz La'aretz? So then he also loses the slave. So Taner Rabbanan. Yeah, Hamaycher Avdei L'Chutz La'aretz. Let's say he sells his Evet to Chutz La'aretz. Yotze L'Cheirus. The slave goes out, he's free. The Tzarech gets Shichr, but he needs to get Shichr. May Rabbi Sheni, from the second master, meaning the guy that bought him. Right? The guy that bought him in Chutz La'aretz, he has to the second guy, I mean the guy that buys him has to give him meaning the guy loses out. We're gonna see the Gemara Vayta is gonna see, does the guy get paid back his money? Meaning this guy did something wrong. Ruvain sold his Eved to Shimon. He did something wrong. So the Eved goes free. Right? So, but you need to get Shichr from the second guy. The Gemara is going to say weiter whether the second guy gets back his money or not. Sometimes the slave does go free and sometimes he doesn't. Ketzad. If the guy says, I sold my Eved, whose name was Pliny, I sold him to this guy from Antuchi, right? That's from where the word Antiochus, I think, comes from, right? Lo yatsa. He doesn't go out because basically all he did was he sold it to a guy who came from Chutz La'aretz. Doesn't mean that the guy is planning on keeping the slave in Chutz La'aretz, but la'antuchi sheba antuchia. But if he sold it to an antuchi that's in the town of Antuchia, which is in Chutz La'aretz, then yatsa, then the slave goes out because he for sure was selling it to keep him in Chutz La'aretz. So Gemara asks, "Vatanya machateo lantuchi yatsa lantuchi ashari belud lo yatsa." If he sold him to an antuchi, then the slave goes out. But a lantuchi that's in Lud, he doesn't go out. Right? So what's the kasha? I mean, it's a stira. The Rosh Shimon Gamliel said antuchi, right? That he doesn't live in Antu. I don't even know how to say Antu, whatever. He doesn't live in that town. Right, meaning it comes out from this brisa that it's unless the guy actually lives in that town, he shouldn't have to pay the knas. It's only if he actually lives there. So like Morales is like kasha, how this like base of Eretz Yisrael. One is somewhere where he has a house in Eretz Yisrael, right? Meaning if the guy says he lives in Antioch but he owns a house in Eretz Yisrael, so then that's not a problem. Then he's no knas. But if he only has a shpiza, if he only has a hotel or a rental in Eretz Yisrael, then he doesn't really live in Eretz Yisrael. So therefore he's going to get the knas, and the eved is going to go free. That's again, it's tully, and if the guy has some sort of base in Eretz Yisrael. Fine. Boy Rav Yirmiyah ben Bavel. I'm sorry, Boy Rav Yirmiyah. Rav Yirmiyah asked the kasha. Ben Bavel. Somebody from Bavel should know Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. This is also another Lamda Shashayla. You have a Ben Bavel who married a woman from Eretz Yisrael. And she brought him, Avadim and Shvachas, to Taite Lobster, and his das is to go back to Bavel. Now, what's the din? Is that called her selling? Meaning, again, you have a single girl who has avodim and shvachas. Now she gets married, and she brings into the marriage, in these slaves. Now these slaves are going to go back to Eretz Yisrael. So is that like she sold it to the guy? If it's like she sold it to the guy, then they're going to be a knas, and the guy's going to go free. Or maybe it's not considered a sale. So what's it going to be dependent on? It's going to be, it's a shaila according to the mandamar that says that the din goes with her. And it's a shaila according to mandamar that says the din goes with him. Now, what's that referring to? We know that there's something called, when the woman brings into the marriage, there's something called nichse milug and nichse tzayin barza. Nichse milug is basically she gives it to the husband. If the husband loses it, he loses it. If he gains from it, he gains from it. The nechse tzayin barzel is that the husband gets to eat the fruits the entire marriage, but the property stays part of the wife's. Right? So therefore,
for something you don't understand, you got that pretty good. Right?
What?
And this is
Oh, the time
one
bars.
of
You're
your
right. Yeah,
one of your things.
slowly. Yes, slowly enough, Totally. I'm getting it slowly.
Okay.
Slowly.
Okay.
Thank you. Right. So basically, here we're talking about the time bars. So what happens if? So again, when they get divorced, so the wife could say, "I want back my fields," and the husband, the shilas, can the husband say, "I'm not giving you back your field. I have too much invested in the field. I'm just going to give you back the payment, whatever the field is worth." So can he do that or not? So if you say, like
Whatever the
the
field
that
is
says
worth
that the
coming
husband will just
in.
give her back money, what it was coming in, correct? Very good, thank you.
Yeah.
Meaning the woman takes the woman is guaranteed. She has a guaranteed return of what it was worth. She's not going to gain. She's not going to lose. Yes, thank you very much. Very conservative investment on the wife's side, right? But the husband says, "I don't want to give you back the field. I put too much effort into it. I'm going to just give you the money." So he's allowed to or not. So that's the Gemara Shaila. It's a Shaila according to the Mandam when it says the din is with her and she gets to take back the field. Since it's like her, so an Eved could also be, it belongs, it actually still belongs to her, even though they're married and the husband can use the Eved, but it belongs to her, right? So it's not considered a sale. But no, but since she's meshubit to him for the payros, he's meshubit to her, right? So kididei, it's like his, meaning he's really meshubit to her, but the bottom line is he's allowed to do whatever he wants with this. So since he's allowed to do whatever he wants with this, it's as if, and he lives in Chutz La'aretz, it's as if she sold the Evet to him for Chutz La'aretz. So that's the shaila according to that side, that she gets to get back her fields. But the and it's a shaila according to the Mandamar that says the din is with him. Since the din is with him, and he could just pay back his wife the worth. Kididei damu. So it's mamish like his. He's not kind of the goof. He only gets the payros, right? From the fields, he only gets the payros of the fields, and he only gets what the Eved produced. He doesn't get the actual Eved. So then the bottom line, it's still hers. So teku, therefore it's a teku. So again, just to recap, the Gemara Shaila is that the Gemara Shaila is that when the shaila is when they're so loud in Mother Stupid. I can't finish it. Hold on, I'm sorry. I don't know why tonight they jacked up.
At least the song they were playing before was once the song of the Daf.
It was?
Yeah, Bosco.
Bosco, I heard that earlier.
We had
Bosco?
Bosco, Yoitzivi,
Okay, I didn't notice. I don't even notice. I don't even know what Bosco is. But anyway, yeah. So again, the Gemara Shaila was when the woman brings in the slaves into the marriage and the guy's going to move back to Bavel, is that considered like she just sold them slaves and therefore they go free or not? So the Gemara says take. Fine. Amar Rabbi Vo. So Rabbi Vo said, Shana li Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan taught me, Evet sheyatza acha Rabbi l'Surya. So now Surya is Syria, right, or the equivalent. Syria was annexed by Eretz Yisrael, but it's not considered how do you call it, biblical Eretz Yisrael. It's considered annexed, and it's a machlokes whether it's considered like Eretz Yisrael or not.
Kiddush Eretz Yisrael is like, is it a shmei or not?
So that is the Shiloh. That's also part of it. So, but the Gemara is saying here that for the Be'egea to Avadim, it's like Chutz La'aretz. That's what the Gemara clearly saying here. So Rabbi Yochanan told Rabbi Vo, and Evet sheyatza acha Rabbi l'Surya. So the master went to Syria, and the Evet chased him, Umachru Sham, and then he sold him. Umachru Sham Rabbi, and his master sold him in Syria. Yatza l'Cheres, he goes to Cheres. Why? Because we look at Syria as it's Chutz La'aretz, and the guy sold his Evet to Chutz La'aretz, and like we said, you're not allowed to do that. But Tani Reb Chia Ibedes Chusay. But didn't Reb Chia say that the slave lost his chus by leaving Eretz Yisrael? He's not allowed to leave Eretz Yisrael. He followed his master to Syria, so he should not. He's done, right? So my answer is like kasha. No, kansha das Rabbi Lasa, kansha ain't das Rabbi Lasa. Rabbi Yochanan was talking about a case where the master was planning on coming back to Eretz Yisrael from Syria. So therefore, the Eved followed him. He figured he'll come back. He'll come back with his master. Kansha ain't das Rabbi Lasa, but the case where he loses his slus is when he knows his master is leaving Eretz Yisrael. He's going to Syria, and he's still going, and this Evet still follows him, and therefore he wasn't allowed to do that. So therefore he loses his schus, and he doesn't get the money to go free. Oh, so Gemara says Vatani, we have a proof to this. But this Vatani is not a kasha, it's a benichusa. It's a proof. Yaitza Eved Echarabi l'Surya. If an Eved goes after his Rebbe to Surya, so Gemara asks, Yaitza, the Gemara is asking within the price of the proof. Yaitza, when he has to go out, is it not enough not to go out? Meaning, you're saying that the Eved has to follow his master to Surya? But Tanan Eina Kol Maitziin. Nobody can, when a guy decides to make Yerida and he decides to move to Chutz La'aretz, he cannot force any of his family or his Avadim to go with him. So how can the Gemara say that the Eved has to go with him? Ela Yotza Eved Acharav l'Surya. What it means is that he went after his master. He didn't have to, but he did. And then Umachu Rabbi Sham, and then his master sold him. There, Imdas Rabbi Lafsar, if the das of his Rebbe is to go back, so then Kaifin Oisai, he can force him. You force him to free him, right? But if his Rebbe is not, his das is not to go back, then you don't force him to free him. Why? Because it's a knas on the slave. He should never have followed his master to Chutz La'aretz. Fine. So now, Omer of Anan, Shmami no demar Shmuel Tarti. I heard two dinim from Shmuel. Chadahach. One was this din about that when Eved goes out of Eretz Yisrael, then you have to free him. The Idach, and another one, the Itmar, we learned let's say a guy sells his field during actual Yovel. Now Yovel, we know that Yovel is every 50th year, the year after the Shemitah year, and the din by Yovel is everything resets. All real estate transactions reset, and they go back to the person that they were sold from, right? So, but what happens if the guy actually sells the field during the 50th year? What's the status then? So, Rav Omar Bechura B'Yaitza. It's considered sold, but then it goes right back out. Meaning the guy could pull a scam. He could sell his field during Yovel. He gets to keep the money, and the field goes right back to him. No different than if he sold the field 45 years ago, got the money, and it goes right back to him. But Shmuel disagrees. It's not sold. Right, so because it's not considered. Where Rashi understands it is that if the field sold before Yovel goes back to the original guy, so then Kol Shekei in the field during Yovel shouldn't even go. It shouldn't even be considered sold.
Isn't it the same thing? Mechora v'yotza and Eina Mechora, isn't it the same thing? I sold it, and again automatically comes back.
No, Shmuel says it's not. No,
the result is the same.
No, he doesn't keep the money. The difference, the nafkamina is in the first, according to the first sheet, according to Rav, he gets to keep the money. The result is the same. Yes, it goes back, but the guy scams the system according to Rav. Right? He scammed the system. He gets to keep the money. According to Shmuel, he doesn't even get to keep the money. I think that's a shot, right?
I wonder what's going to happen in a few years.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea how it. I don't know how it rolls. This whole Yovel thing, and it's like Monopoly. You play Monopoly, and then all of a sudden, game's over. Everybody goes back to scratch. Everybody's going to start a new game, right? Okay, whatever it is. So that's what Shmuel said. The V'chadra. So that's the money. You have to give back the money now. So he says in one case by the Eved, well, we don't know. Ravanan doesn't know. So again, the first case is the Eved gets sold illegally, so he has to be freed. Okay, so does the guy that paid for the Eved, now the Eved has to go free. Does he get to get back his money or not? And the same thing with this field during Yovel. Does he get back his money or not? So b'chadra hadri zvini, b'chadra lo hadri zvini. I don't know which one the culprit gets back his money. So Rav Yosef Nefsianan. Let's look at it. In the Tani Bebraisa, we learned that the Bebraisa after the Chutz La'aretz, somebody sells his Evet to Chutz La'aretz Yotza L'Cheres, he goes free. The Tzarek gets Shikhr me Rabbi Sheni, and he needs a get Shikhr. Right? He needs documentation from the Rabbi Sheni that he's free. Shmamina Kanya Rabbi Sheni. We see from this that the Rabbi Sheni was kind to him. V'loy Hadri Zvini, and he doesn't go back. Meaning it's a standard. He's considered part of the second guy's property now. That's why he has to give him the documentation to free him. And Mamela, that's it. He doesn't get back his money. Otherwise, because meaning if he gets back his money, then the first guy should have to give him the documentation of freedom, not the second guy. Right? Right? And when Shmuel says that by Yovel, the field is not sold, and the money must go back. Because again, Rav Anan had said he only heard by one of them, Shmuel says the money goes back. So he's saying that the money doesn't go back to the Eved, to the guy that bought the Eved. So then by Shemitah, by Yovel, it's going to go back. On Talmud Aleph. But Rav Anan, what's that? So now, Rav Anan didn't know. So the Brisa seemingly says beferish, the answer that by Shmuel said the Eved, the guy that buys Eved does not get his money back, and the Yovel guy will. So what about Rav Anan? So Brisa Shmuel, he never heard this Brisa, so that's why he had this Shaila. Bima the Shmuel. And what about from the words that Shmuel said that it's not, he can't even sell the field. Who says that the field is not sold and the money goes back? Dilma, Eina Mechura, maybe the field is not sold. Maybe the money was a matana. Why? Because meaning who in the right mind is going to sell a field in Yovel or buy a field in Yovel when he knows it's immediately going back? According to all opinions, Sai Rav and Sai Shmuel, it's going automatically back to the seller. So which bozo is going to pay money for this field? Elamai must be, he was giving a matana. He just paid a shtick. It's like sometimes, people that want to give tzedakah, people ask, they want to give services to somebody who could use the money, but they want to pay more money, right? Or they make up a service. They make up like a guy, he does cleaning or car cleaning for Pesach. Guy doesn't need his car cleaned for Pesach. He wants to do it anyways because he wants to give the guy parnasa. So maybe that's what the guy did here too. Maybe he meant, because no anybody with half a brain is not buying a land when it goes right back to the guy. So maybe he just meant to do it as a matana. Midi dava makadash as a chayse. Let's say a guy is we'll see this in Kedushin, Bez Hashem. A guy is makadash's sister. Now we know that nobody can be makadash's sister. It doesn't work, right? The itmar makadash as a chayse. Rav Amar Mois Chayzim, the money goes back to the guy because the marriage is not a marriage. The Shmuel Amar Mois Matana, no. Everybody knows a guy can't marry his sister. So must be it was just a shtick in order to give his sister some money. So he told his sister, I'm marrying you. Right? So Shmuel held that by the marriage. So maybe he held the same thing by Shemitah. And therefore the guy doesn't have to give back his money because he really meant to give it as a present. Fine. Gemara says, my chaz is the kansina l'lekeach. So now, according to this, who gets the knas? The guy that bought the slave, right? Because we're saying that the guy that bought the slave has to free the slave, and he doesn't get back his money. So why is he getting the knas? The meicher did something wrong. He sold his slave. He wasn't allowed to, meaning they both did something wrong. So I was asking, why is the one that's losing out the guy that bought the slave? He said, Lav Akbar Ganav. The mouse is not the Ganav, Ela Choyra Ganav. The hole that the mouse hides is in Yonah the Yom for those of us upstate, right? The mouse is not in bungalows, Rachamim. The mouse is not the one who stole, meaning the hole got the stolen property, right? So Mamela, the guy who received the Eved is the guy that was benefiting from the illegal transaction. So Mamela, he's the one that pays the knas. The Gemara says,
I mean,
it's very nice.
The hole is a sheval tasta. The hole doesn't do anything. The hole is just there.
Right. Well, the Gemara is sort of asking your
that's the whole argument. The gun doesn't kill, the person kills. It's not the liberals and the conservatives fighting.
Very good, right? It's not the gun that kills, the person that kills. Or well, David, I think what you're saying is the Gemara's kash. If you don't have a mouse to steal the food, so how's the hole getting any food? Right? So you don't have a guy selling the slave. How's the guy going to buy a slave? You can put an ad in the paper. You want to buy a slave. If you don't find somebody to sell it to, you're not going to have it. So Gemara here says the teretz mistavra hechat deika isura. Wherever the isser is, hasam kansinan, there we give the knas. Right? Meaning, who's the one that has the isser in his hand right now? The purchaser. So he's the one that gets the knas. Right? But the seller, he's not getting the tzaddik of the year award. But the bottom line is, he's not the one that has not stolen, but that has the illegal property in his hand. So therefore, he doesn't have the knas. Okay.
If he has the
Okay.
charata, that means then he gets a bigger neshama.
Very good. Go full circle. Very good. Very good. David, I think your son came to the coach